Sa inyong lahat. Today, as promised, I have here with us, her name is Victoria An, and she is from Korea. She is the head of communications of the Fair Agency Foundation. And if you hear the word foundation, it is a charitable organization. And so she is here this afternoon for an information drive, and I will not take much of her time.
Wow.
So welcome. Let us give her a round of applause.
Thank you so much, everyone. My name is Victoria. I am so happy to be here with you today. Thank you for welcoming me into your space. Thank you, Pastor, for organizing this. So I'm very happy to be sharing with you some information about our organization, and also I think some information relevant to you as for your work as domestic workers here in Hong Kong as well. So before I start into anything, I will first, may I just pull the mouse? Great, this first. Thank you. Hi. So before I start, let me explain a little bit about our mission at Fair Employment Foundation. Yes. So Fair Employment Foundation, as Pastor mentioned, is a charity in Hong Kong, and our mission is to build market solutions to end forced labor of migrant workers across Asia. And what that means is that we are becoming employment agencies and training centers ourselves, and educating employers in the market to understand how to be fair employers and make the process of hiring domestic workers and other migrant workers more fair. So, yeah. And the thing is, we are a very optimistic organization. We believe that the problems, as big as they are and as challenging as they are, we believe that it can be solved. And that is why we are continuing to work motivated towards this issue. So in Hong Kong, our social business is called Fair Employment Agency. You may or may not have heard about it, but we are a nonprofit ethical agency, and we've been here in Hong Kong for 7 years already. And this is our business model. This is how we work. Why we started is because we saw that domestic workers were in really bad situations, in jobs that they couldn't leave. And they couldn't leave it because of debts that they owed to agencies, and the recruitment fees that they feared to pay when they were going to get a new job. And we saw that this doesn't work. This is not right for workers, and also it's not good for employers as well, right? And this is the business model we are working with. It's very simple in a way. It's just don't charge anything to workers, so that there is no loans, so there's no debt to the agency, and they're able to find a good job in order to support their families and achieve the goals that they came to Hong Kong to achieve. And then for employers, the employers pay the service fee because they're paying for a service for an agency to help them find a worker, to help them with all the paperwork, to understand what it is to be a good employer and how to follow all the legal obligations and all of that. And I say it's simple, but it's not just the fact that we don't have workers charge fees. Then what it actually makes us do is the only way that we are successful in this business model, because we don't have extra money from the side and no extra cushioning, we need to make sure that we do a really, really good job. We need to do a really good job each time so that the worker is happy in her job and she will tell her friends. The employer is also really happy and he or she will tell their friends as well. So this is the business model that we are working with, and this is the business model that we want to be the standard across the industry. This is how migration should work. This is how employment agencies should work. And our vision is very simple. Is very much just to become the best at what we do. And by becoming the best at what we do, we'll become the biggest and show others that this is the way that agencies should work. And so right now, we're one of the top 10 agencies in Hong Kong in terms of size, like in terms of Filipino worker placements, we are one of the biggest. And we are proving it to the market here, and also like we have interests in other countries that also recruit domestic workers, like Malaysia, to understand our business model more. We are also in 2018, so we started in 2014. In 2018, we also became a break-even business. So we're a non-profit, so we don't make any profit, but we are able to cover all our costs. So something we always get asked is, how does it work that you don't charge any fees to the worker? But we're proof of that you can run this business and do provide the service without workers having to be charged fees. And for a picture of who we are here in Hong Kong, we are a team of 22, so quite a medium-sized team, and we have offices in Sheung Wan and in Tsuen Wan in the New Territories. If you heard of us in the very beginning, we actually had an office in Wan Chai, but we moved from there. And we have accreditations from the Philippines, Indonesia, and Thailand. But we've actually mostly worked with Filipino workers, and so from the very beginning we've been able to do that. And most recently we started working with Indonesian workers as well. We're very happy about this because we've always wanted to work with Indonesian workers because they are also half of the domestic worker population here. But the problem there had been that in Indonesia, it was actually legal for workers to be charged fees, whereas in the Philippines, there is a law that says no fees to workers from the agency side. So we had very difficult time finding the right partners and things like that. But finally, things have fallen into place, and we just started becoming able to work with Indonesian workers as well. And we are, and something apart from our business side, we want to be an educator because we want people to understand what it means to employ a domestic worker from all different perspectives, so that they're, especially employers and workers, to be able to make the right decisions when they're entering contracts, when they're leaving contracts, things like that. So we do talks like this. We try to reach out to the community. We do talks with employers as well, and in their offices during lunchtime, we try to go in and talk about hiring. And also we have a website that is full of information. And yeah, if you have a chance, please do check it out. It's just www.fairagency.org. And that is a blog. There is a blog there with lots and lots of information about rights and entitlements, some of which I'll go through here today as well. Yeah, and this is a picture of us. So you can see we're quite a medium-sized team. All of us are a little bit quite young, I would say. all of us are quite motivated to find solutions in the world, to do good, and very friendly people. So if you ever have to visit us, we'll welcome you in. And we have those 2 offices in Shenzhen and Chunwan. Yeah. So far in our history, we've placed over 5,000 domestic workers into jobs, and none of those workers were charged anything. All the employers cover the fees, and remember I said we have to do a good job every time, and you can see we take it very seriously. So after a worker starts in their job, we'll send out a survey to ask them how they're doing. Are you getting your salary? Are you getting your rest day? We send them a survey on an SMS text. And then employer, we also send them an email. How's everything going? Do you have any questions? And we have a very high review from all of both sides. 90% of them will be happy to recommend us to a friend. So yeah, this is just a recap of what we do, our mission. But maybe stepping a little bit back, I want to highlight, so that was our social business in Hong Kong, the Fair Employment Agency. Sorry, there's a lot of text there, but the other social business that we have in the Philippines actually is called Fair Training Center. And it was set up about 2 years after we started operating Fair Employment Agency here. And the reason behind it is because we realized we were working mostly with local domestic workers rather than first-timers and things like that. But when we wanted to work with first-time workers, we realized the preparation and training that's available for them wasn't doing them any good, like not doing good enough, not really supporting them for the real change that migration brings. Like when you move abroad, I'm sure you will agree that there's so many changes that happen to your life. You know, the homesickness, the talking to family back home, managing your finances, it just becomes very different. And so that was why we set up Fair Training Center. It's a TESDA accredited training center, and we have also worked with other NGOs to create different curriculum to emphasize more on goal planning, savings planning, talking to family back home, and also there's also role play with pretending to talk to your employer about something difficult as well. So that workers, when they arrive in Hong Kong and they may go through some challenges in the beginning, they're resilient and they're aware of what that is, and they have the motivation to keep going so that they can complete their contracts and achieve their goals. So that is Fair Training Center. It trains first-time domestic workers, and we've also started working with maritime professionals as well. But yeah, this is another side of our organization. So just an overview of that. So that is a long introduction to our organization and who we are and who I am being part of this organization. And this part I will talk more about some current questions that workers are asking, a lot about for their contracts and things like that. And then hopefully after I have gone through these questions, I hope to hear from you and answer any of your questions as well. So please keep thinking about them and we'll try to get to them after this. So, COVID and vaccines. It's so awesome to see that over 75% of you have already taken the vaccine. That it's great that you are all protected. But yeah, one thing we always get asked is, is the COVID vaccine a requirement for a new contract? And the answer is no. That hasn't been mandatory yet. I know there was some stressful few weeks for the compulsory testing and some media that happened. We were also really stressed too. We were trying to tell all our workers to go get tested, and thankfully that's over. If your friends are looking for information on the vaccine, of course there's the government website. There's also information in Tagalog, so just if you need to refer someone to some more information, make sure to send them there. And then in the Philippines as well, sometimes people ask us if they're coming from the Philippines, should they get vaccinated? That is, I think, right now, unfortunately, the flight suspension is still in place. But in preparation for when it lifts, it would be a good idea to get vaccinated, because the Hong Kong government has also announced some measures for those who are already vaccinated, making quarantine shorter. And OFWs in the Philippines are in the A1 priority group, so they're able to get it now. And they're also able to choose the vaccine that their employer has requested. And if you have any friends who are in the Philippines right now, they should check the Hong Kong government's list of COVID vaccines that are recognized, so they make sure they get the right one. Yeah. And then the question about hiring. Are employers hiring right now? Obviously, with all the travel and quarantine restrictions, things are more complicated. There's additional costs for employers, and there's additional timelines. But from our perspective as an agency, we see, that's obviously employers still have their needs. They still need support in their homes, childcare, elderly care, those things don't stop. So people are still hiring, and they're getting more prepared for longer timelines and better expectations. So the answer is yes, employers are hiring, and even hiring from abroad. We've seen that even though the timelines are a bit more uncertain for those who are abroad, they are still willing to hire workers. So if you may have friends or family members who want to apply for jobs in Hong Kong, it is still possible, but it is something that both sides have to be very patient about. Obviously, employers will prefer to work with those who are already in Hong Kong, so the timelines are shorter, because just for the visa processing stage for overseas workers is about 5 months right now. Usually it's like 11 weeks, 3 months, something like that. But now it's 5 months, so it's a very long process. And then on top of it, we don't know yet when the flight ban will raise, and the quarantines are 21 days for now, right? So this is something to keep in mind for overseas workers. But then the main concern for our workers who are here in Hong Kong is the need to go back home. Will the immigration allow workers to process locally in Hong Kong? So we've seen that immigration is exempting workers from having to go back home to process their new contract. But this is on a case-by-case basis, and the immigration officer has the final say. So there needs to be some documentation of why you can't go home, and that a letter from your new employer saying we need this worker to start soon, we cannot wait, things like that is something our agency has been working with, and we've been able to process these exemptions. but still there has been also some rejection, so this is something, a factor to keep in mind. And another, I guess another element of it is that you may have heard of visas being rejected, right? And we've seen increasingly over the couple weeks, months, that immigration is looking through worker history, and if there is short-term contracts, like the contract was ended prematurely, it's not a finished contract, a broken contract, twice in 1 year, that is quite high chance of a visa being rejected. So there is greater, there's some more questions being asked, a bit more stricter. So this is something to keep in mind. If you are looking for an employer or you think you might need to end a contract sooner, I would recommend you guys to talk to Fair Agency. Our staff will try to understand your situation more and advise you whether you should apply now or apply later if you can. It's always better to finish a contract. It looks much better on work history, but also there's this element of being more strict in immigration. So I'm going to talk a bit about home leaves and visa extensions just because of the current travel situation, and I wonder, I think this might be most relevant to you. So home leave is different to annual leave. Home leave is a requirement by the immigration office, immigration department, whereas annual leave is paid holidays that you are entitled to as benefits as part of your contract, right? So I think when you first start your first contract with the same employer, you're entitled to 7 days of annual leave, and then it goes up to 14 days maximum, one added every year. So on that, I will be giving out some calendar cards here, but this is a little bit about statutory holidays and holiday entitlements for domestic workers, and so if you'd like to take one. And for statutory holidays, just a reminder that domestic workers are entitled to all statutory holidays off, and if an employer asks you to work on a statutory holiday, it needs to be returned within 60 days. Sometimes workers think that if they've been working less than 3 months, they cannot get a statutory holiday, but that's not true. So no matter how long you've been working, domestic workers are entitled to statutory holidays. I know it's a bit, there's many confusing little details. So for information on this, you can, I mentioned our website, you can check those entitlements, but also you may have gotten a Labor Department booklet about domestic worker employment in Hong Kong. That has all the information in there, but it just takes some time to read. So that's something to keep in mind. All right. Okay. So overstaying. As you know, overstaying is very serious. Immigration is very strict on this. But then it's so easy to do it by accident as well, I think. The visa expiry date is in your passport. Right? It's not in the contract, it's in the passport. So that's something to keep in check of. It's important to apply for visa extension if your visa is getting expired soon. And especially since everyone might be deferring home leave, this is important to check just in case the date is passing by. So if you have deferred home leave when starting your current contract, you have, when you deferred your home leave, Immigration Department didn't give you a full 2-year visa. So it expires earlier than your contract. So this is that will be a situation where you should check and apply for a visa extension. The second scenario for needing to check for visa extension is if your passport was not fully valid for the 2 years and you have to renew it, then the visa is only valid until your passport expires. Yes. Yeah. So that's when you will need to extend your visa. So there is an online portal for visas to be extended. So very easy. I think just Google Smart Renewal from Immigration Department. And if your employer would like to use an agency to extend visa, Fair Agency is able to do it as well. So that is something to keep in mind. There was something else. I think also what I wanted to mention about home leave, it's quite a longer discussion. Because home leave and deferred home leave kind of raised some questions for our team as well, because when a worker who has deferred home leave finishes the contract or ends a contract, what happens to the entitlements of home leave? You might be wondering that. And we realized that in this contract, it should have been indicated whether the home leave is paid or unpaid. So this needs to be decided when the contract is signed, and the employer and worker should mutually agree whether the home leave was paid or unpaid. So if it happens where a worker has deferred home leave and the contract is terminated, then the home leave pay is also part of the entitlement based on the contract. And then, as you may know, the flights for each contract, the employer is responsible for a full round trip, right? So one ticket here and one ticket back. Yes. And the question always now is, does the employer need to buy a ticket or can they pay in cash? The answer is that they can do either. But the thing is that it is up to the choice of the employer. So some employers, you should actively ask them to just give you in cash, or else they may book it, right? But it's up to their choice. And prices of flights are quite different now. So something we ask employers to do is just to go online and look at some different prices in order to choose how much cash in lieu they will pay out. And those are the most important things. Also, if you are continuing to defer home leave and need to extend your visa, the government is able to help employers and workers extend the visa from 1 to 3 months. So it doesn't have to be a full contract renewal at this point. So this is something to keep in mind as well. Yeah. Okay. Great. I think I have run through a lot of the questions that I had prepared, but I'm hoping to hear from you and your questions so that we can make it more relevant for you today. Can I open up the floor to questions?
Okay, do you have any questions? Sino yung magtatanong? Yes.
For right contract, they said that lots of visas were being of going home? Is there any good, we can provide a good reason so that we can be providing a good reason?
So this is a great question. For us, we have seen that we are able to process some exemptions where, especially if the worker has a long work history before, and it's just maybe the first time this is a short contract, and then we will explain the travel situation. There's a supporting letter from the new employer, and these are all submitted to immigration. Then that makes it a better explanation for immigration to understand the full picture. Yeah, I think it's more of the situation where like the worker's history has multiple short contracts in a short space of time, so 2 short contracts in 1 year. That's when it's less likely to have the acceptance. Yeah. Thank you. So one thing I wanted to mention about FAIR is that we also accept all contract status. So finished, broken, terminated, all workers are welcome to apply, and we don't make a differentiation because we understand there's so many reasons why a contract is ended, and we feel that every home is different, right? That even if you work for one Chinese family, another Chinese family is very different as well. So it doesn't mean that if one thing didn't work out here, then the other thing is going to be as bad. So that is something we always emphasize to employers. We want to help employers understand a full picture of the profile of applicants, of workers, and also for workers, we also want to understand not just how many years you worked here, how many children you work with. We want to understand, did you like working with children? Do you want to continue working with children? Or maybe not. Or maybe, what kind of manager do you like? So maybe you're happy to work with someone who gives you very close instructions, so written down instructions, or maybe you prefer to be more independent. These are the things that we think are going to make people successful. And so our application form is a bit different, and our recruitment style is a bit different as well. But that's why we accept, people who have different work histories, like broken, terminated contracts. And this is something we've always wanted to do from the very beginning to make it very clear to the market, to employers, that it's not just those terminologies that make a difference, but actually who the person is, who the candidate is, and what the job is as well. So, yes.
I want to clarify about the home leave of studies, because usually we go home every 2 years, that is 14 days. So what about the 7 days home leave? Is it different from the annual leave?
Yes, so 7, the home leave is a different requirement from annual leave. The home leave is the requirement from immigration department, and then on top of that you will have annual leave.
So it's like we can get 21 days.
If you have 14 days annual leave,
Yeah.
and then you have another 7 days.
But
The pay part is, again, the home leave, whether it's paid or unpaid, is indicated in the contract. So you need to be in a on a clause, on the clause 13 of the standard contract is already written. Yeah, you read your contract. And then annual leave are paid holidays.
thank you.
Yes.
The 14 days annual credit is given after the contract is expired, right? When you finish 2 years, then you are entitled, a domestic helper is entitled for a 14-day annual leave, right?
The annual leave is just holiday dates you can take throughout your contract period. So they can be taken pro rata, or you might want to take it all together. So it's just a holiday dates you can take.
So you mean to say they are not entitled for a 14 days annual leave if all these statutory holidays will be used?
Statutory holidays are different. So you might want to, so you have 14 days of annual leave, and you may choose to use them at the end of the contract to go home for holiday.
Okay.
Yeah, that's fine. Or you might, take 2 days, I don't know, maybe vacation.
And then how about the 7 days that you just provided?
I'm sorry.
Home leave. When can the domestic helper earn that?
Yeah.
The home leave is not earned; it's required.
Required, okay.
So you need to. That's why if you don't take home leave, you need to submit that you're deferring home leave, and you get your visa extended. Right. So when you get, that's when you change employers. Home leave, right? When you change employers, you need to take home leave, but then you might have deferred it, and then you're supposed to take it before your visa expires.
Oh, so
Yeah.
that's for the part of the domestic helper, but not for the employer.
The part of the domestic.
Yeah, that is the rights of the domestic helper when they are going to process a new contract,
Yes.
right? But
It's the requirement.
yeah, by the immigration.
Yes.
But on the part of the employer,
And part of the employer also just needs to let you go for home leave so that the visa can be activated. The full visa needs to be activated.
So, okay, so our understanding is, because our understanding is the annual leave is the one required.
I think this is
It's very confusing.
yeah, it's a very confusing thing. But just remember, home leave and annual leave are different, are separate things. Okay, so annual leave is your benefit, your entitlement from the labor department as a worker, right? As your annual leave holiday. And then home leave is a requirement by immigration to activate. It's actually kind of a thing from immigration to not allow workers to stay in Hong Kong for too long, right? It's trying to ask workers to go back and then come back for the new job. And the home leave is for when it's for like finished contract or special case contract like relocation workers. Because they're able to process locally, so they can just start their new job. But so immigration is requiring you to go home at some point within the 2 years.
How about the whole leave? Are there any corresponding days beside the annual leave? Because you said that annual leave is our rights or it's already mandatory. And then when we home leave, when we get the home leave, are there any days that they were going to give us say additional to the 14 days?
They can be together like that.
Because the annual leave is 7, so if you use the 2 years, it's already 14 days.
Whether the question whether home leave days and annual leave days can be taken together. So home leave is when you're changing new employer. So you just started with this employer, right? So the annual leave, because it's the same employer, you won't have that many annual leave days yet. Oh no. I think I will have to look into this. Maybe look on our Facebook page, and if I figure it out, I'll post something. Our Facebook page is just Fair Agency. If you search us, I will look into this in more detail. It's something new that we've also realized that home leave, to really want to emphasize is that it's different, especially during COVID times with the travel restrictions. It's a bit confusing. What is the entitlement? How do you solve this question? Yeah.
Most of us didn't go home.
Sorry?
I think the home leave because the annual leave has been there since before. But this home leave is, I think it's a new one. We did not know about this.
Si Benji kasi nagamit yan. There's one member here. She asked the employer for the home leave, but she's not here now.
She can
She asked for the annual leave, then she asked for the home leave. Then she can have the home leave, but this additional, for example, 4 days. She asked for the home leave for another 7 days.
So
Annual
21
leave
days.
with pay. These 7 days, no pay. She got the 21 days, but the other 7 days, no pay.
Yeah, but that's not fair.
So annual leave is paid, but
It depends on the employer.
Yeah, but
It's like
yeah, the home leave, that's why you have to check your contract. It's clause 13, the home leave, whether it's paid or unpaid.
It's written
Yeah.
contract.
Yes, we have a question.
As I remember when I get another new employer, so I cannot go back home for 3 years. The employer sent a letter to the immigration department, sent a letter to my employer asking that I need to home leave to go to Philippines or go to Macau for another not 7 days. The visa is another 1 year more visa. So I think that is a home leave is not additional to the 14 days annual leave. That is my experience.
Thank you. Yeah, so thank you. This letter is coming from immigration, so we can see it's
That I need to go out
Yes.
or to go back home to get another visa for 1 year.
yes, thank you.
The requirement.
So one thing I want to mention here is exiting to back home or to Macau. And it's actually right now you can't do it anyway. But Macau is not legal to do this. Actually, and it just can be very serious consequences if this was found out. So make sure that to go home rather than to go to Macau. And some things that maybe more in Hong Kong is we know that during COVID times, a lot of workers have been asked to stay home for the rest day and things like that. And we have talked to employers also just to make sure that they know that 24 hours is a consecutive 24-hour rest day is the legal requirement. And for employers to understand that, even if a worker is choosing to stay home, then there needs to be some communication within the household, like how you will maintain the 24-hour rest. So maybe the children cannot go into play, or some expectations are set. And we also, we know it's a difficult conversation to bring up sometimes, but as workers, also you can mention the full rest day is, really helps you to keep your energy and chance for you to handle your personal things before work starts again the next day. So this is, I think, over COVID situation, there has been a lot more pressure within employers and workers because we're spending more time together. It's more closeness, and there's many work from home and things like that. So this is where we really emphasize communication from both sides. And this is something we also teach at Fair Training Center as well, to for workers, especially first-timers. They're very shy. They don't want to ask questions or things like that. So we try to emphasize this, but as just a gentle reminder, also if you have questions or things that you're thinking about, we see that especially during COVID times, you don't want to make decision to break contracts or things like that. So active communication is healthy for the long-term relationship of the worker and employer as well.
Yesterday, the other day, my friend is asking me, is it the ban from the Philippines is still going on, right?
Yes,
Yeah, but
since
she's asking if she can come in Hong Kong even without vaccination.
so right now there is no requirement for travelers to be vaccinated.
Oh.
There's also no requirement for domestic workers to be vaccinated.
So it's not
But if the Hong Kong government has made some flexibility, reduced days in quarantine for some countries who are vaccinated. So right now I think Philippines and Indonesia, Brazil, and UK are just banned from entering right now. But then maybe when the ban is lifted, they will be in Group A, and that will still require 21 days, probably. But if the situation gets better, then hopefully there are more flexibilities with vaccination.
So that means it's not necessary if you are vaccinated in the Philippines and you go over here.
Yeah, it's not necessary, but OFWs are in the priority A1 group as well. Yes, question in the back.
One more. About the job hopping, because from visa applicants who were checked by the Immigration Department. So can you explain further what is job hopping and what are the reasons that we can see that they have from that one?
Yeah, so the Hong Kong government the Immigration Department has put out some message that they are concerned about job hopping, and what that means is that they're just concerned about multiple short contracts, right? So this is why if the contracts there's 2 short contracts in 1 year, then they call this job hopping. So this is why this if possible, avoid ending the contract early. If there's ways to So do you have any questions about working with agencies? The very basic things are, agencies in Hong Kong are not allowed to charge workers more than 10% of their first month's salary. Yes. And they are required to give you receipts for anything you pay. They are not allowed to keep your passport from you. And they're required to explain your contract and things like that. you have any other questions?
Any more?
Yes.
How much do you charge employers if they want to hire from your foundation?
Yeah, so our fair agency prices are on our website. So it's different for Filipino and Indonesian processing because the processes are a bit different. Like their Indonesian processing requires a few more documents and things like that. So for employers who are looking for a domestic worker and they haven't found anyone themselves yet, then it's 10,900 for Filipino worker processing. And then our direct hire service is for employers who already found someone. So maybe they found a recommendation from their friends or they found online and they just need someone to process the paperwork. I can't remember the exact number, but it's on our website. And if you have any employers who you already found on your own and you want to use an agency to process the paperwork, then you can contact us.
So hiring from Hong Kong, the charge is different from hiring in the Philippines.
So if the employer hasn't found anyone yet, that's called our full service, full placement service. And it doesn't matter whether the worker is in Hong Kong or in the Philippines. But if they've already found someone and someone is here locally, that service is cheaper than if they found someone overseas and they want to do overseas processing, but they already found someone. So that is more expensive than just So the difference is between whether they found someone already or they didn't find someone.
So it's all in your website?
Yes, yeah. Fairagency.org. Yes. So for anyone who has friends or family back in the Philippines who's a first timer who's trying to get their domestic worker NC2 certificate, I don't know if there are, but the COVID situation has made it really difficult for training centers to operate and for assessments to happen. But luckily, the FAIR Training Center that I mentioned before has started a pilot program with TESDA and the International Labor Organization to make this training process faster and safe during COVID. So what it is it's a 10-day online program that is done through Facebook and our trainers on video call, and the trainees will learn at home. And then the last 2 days, the trainee will come to our center in Paranaque, and they will get the hands-on experience, and then they can get assessment. So this is a pilot program that TESDA is leading, and hopefully this will be an easier way for Filipino workers who are trying to deploy soon. And yeah, this is something if you have friends or family back home, you can let them know about it, and you can look at Fair Training Center's website. It's just fairtraining.org.
Some of my friends wanted to ask if the new helper come here and then they receive the first salary, are they required to pay 10% of their salary to the agency?
It depends on the service agreement with the agency. So there should be, hopefully you have a written agreement and indication whether it is required. So the 10% is the maximum of the first month's salary, and it should be charged only after the first month when you receive the salary first.
Your agency
Yeah, our agency doesn't do
Like, ang agency. Parang 10%.
So, yeah, for us, we just keep it simple, no fees. And even if like overseas medical exam, we'll reimburse the basic medical exam as well.
Do you have an agency in Cebu or just only in Manila?
We work with a partner agency, so we all Hong Kong agencies need to have a partner agency. But I think our partner doesn't have a branch in Cebu. There's other, I'm not sure where, but yeah. Yes. No, not just in Manila. I think there's other provinces, but not sure about Cebu. Yeah.
Thank you.
How much is the current salary of domestic helpers now?
So the minimum salary
Yes.
is 4,630. Yeah. So
last
this,
year.
yeah, the increase last year. But that's you should be paid above this or at this. So and also the food allowance. So the employer can choose to pay food allowance or share food. And it's, the food allowance is 1,120. Yes, it's okay. Thank you so much for your time.
We will look into our website.
Yeah, I'm sure if you have many other questions in your mind, you're welcome to message us on Facebook. Our team will try to answer as best as they can, and we also, welcome you to check our website as well. Yeah. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Sister. It is wonderful to hear that there is such an agency that doesn't charge domestic workers. I've been here for the last 25 years, and this is my first time to hear that there is such. And one of the good things that I see here is their hands-on approach to helping domestic helpers, even if they are already employed. Normally, agencies, your experiences. Right after they have taken your money, then they have nothing to do with you.
Yes.
Okay? But fair is fair. Fair is fair, and even the trainings are free. So, is it?
Yeah, right
Yeah.
now it's free.
It's free. The training is free. So if you have mga kamag-anak and friends in the Philippines, tell them to enroll or apply with FAIR agency and their corresponding partners in the Philippines. Get to their website, www.fairagency.org, and then apply. Why would you pay a hefty sum of money, which we believe some agencies are collecting, some even up to 40,000-50,000 pesos, and pay it the loans that you have to make before you come, when there is such thing as free. Okay, so grab the opportunity and spread the word around and help someone who wants to be deployed here in Hong Kong. Amen? Palakpakan po natin sila. Okay. Meron pong mga bagay na dinidistribute dito, and so you can take one so that you can have the information. Again, thank you very much.
Thank you so much.